You think you know betrayal? You think you understand what it means to be stabbed in the back by someone you trust completely? Well, let me tell you about what happened to me. The most shocking case of marital deception and business fraud you will ever hear. I built an empire from absolutely nothing, only to discover that my husband of 12 years, the man I shared my bed with, raised children with, and trusted with my life's work, was systematically stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from our joint business while carrying on a secret affair with a 23-year-old woman. But here is where my story becomes absolutely incredible. The employee who was forced to help him steal my money became my greatest ally in executing the most elaborate and satisfying revenge scheme you will ever hear. What happened next will completely blow your mind and restore your faith in justice. I am about to tell you my true story that involves financial fraud, adultery, corporate espionage, and a plot twist so perfect that Hollywood could never write anything this good. The way my entire situation unfolded is something you would never believe if it were fiction. Don't go anywhere before I finish this story because I promise you the ending will blow your mind. The way this whole situation unfolded is something you wouldn't believe if it was fiction. Before I dive into everything that happened, please hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and share it with someone who needs to hear this story. Trust me, you're going to want to discuss this with everyone you know. Let me start from the beginning, because context is everything here. I got married when I was 25 years old, and I had always been passionate about cooking. I started small, making lunchboxes from my tiny kitchen and selling them to construction workers at nearby job sites. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest, and the food was good, really good. The workers would finish their meals and tell their friends at other construction sites, and slowly but surely, word spread about my cooking. I was completely on my own back then. No financial backing, no business plan written in fancy offices, just me, my recipes, and a determination to make something of myself. I found a strategic spot near several construction sites and started building relationships with the crews. The construction industry runs on good, hearty food, and these men were hungry for something better than fast food every day. What does being financially stable mean when you're starting from nothing? It means you can pay your rent without panic, cover your basic expenses, and keep doing the work you've chosen without drowning in debt. I wasn't saving money or building wealth yet, but I wasn't going backwards either. That was my definition of success at that point in my life. That's when I met him. My future husband walked into my life when I was finally standing on solid ground, when my little lunchbox business was actually working. He didn't have much when we met. Honestly, neither of us did. But what he lacked in money, he made up for in ambition and ideas. After we got married, he made a decision that changed everything. He financed a motorcycle in his name, and suddenly, my entire business model could expand. Before the motorcycle, I was limited to walking distance with a small cart I had converted with foam coolers. I could only make 3 or 4 trips per day, and I could only reach construction sites within a reasonable walking radius. But with that motorcycle and my husband as a delivery driver, everything changed overnight. We could reach construction sites across the entire city. He didn't just drive deliveries, though. He became a true business partner. He designed flyers, distributed them strategically, mapped out the most efficient delivery routes, and started building relationships with site supervisors and project managers. The business grew rapidly with both of us working together. Soon we needed to hire help. My husband took on 2 delivery drivers, and I hired a young woman to help with food preparation. Within 6 months, I did something I never thought I'd be able to do as someone who had always worked for others. I registered all 3 employees officially, giving them proper employment benefits, health insurance, and job security. My husband handled the administrative and financial side of operations, while I focused on what I did best, cooking and maintaining quality. We hired an accounting firm to manage payroll and financial reporting. More employees joined our team as contracts grew larger and more demanding. Then we hired her. Let's call her Sandra. Sandra came to work for us to help my husband with the financial management side of the business. By this point, we had been married for 12 years. We had 12 employees, and we were handling major contracts, including a significant government contract providing meals for a correctional facility. This correctional facility contract was particularly important because institutional food service has a terrible reputation. Too often, These contracts result in substandard meals that barely meet nutritional requirements. We took pride in providing quality, nutritious meals that exceeded expectations, and our reputation in the industry grew because of it. After 12 years of marriage and building this business together, my husband and I decided we were ready to start a family. With Sandra now managing the financial operations, we felt confident enough to take this next step in our personal lives while maintaining our professional growth. I got pregnant with our first child, a beautiful baby boy. Life was good. We had moved into a nice apartment, bought a beach house, and we both had good cars. The business was thriving with strong contracts and steady growth. Then, during my recovery period after giving birth, I got pregnant again and had a daughter. During those 2 years when I was pregnant and then caring for 2 small children, I hired a nanny so I could remain involved in business decisions while also being present as a mother. Sandra continued managing the company finances, and from what I could see reviewing reports and financial statements from home, everything was progressing well. But here's where the story takes a dark turn, and you're not going to believe what I discovered. When I returned to work full-time after finishing breastfeeding, I immediately noticed something was wrong with Sandra. This woman who had always been cheerful, energetic, and playful around the office now looked worried all the time. Her entire demeanor had changed. She stopped making jokes, rarely smiled, and seemed to carry a constant weight on her shoulders. I called Sandra into my office because I genuinely cared about my employees' well-being. I assumed she was dealing with a family crisis or personal financial problems. In my experience, when good employees suddenly change their behavior, it's usually because something serious is happening in their personal lives that they're trying to handle alone. I told Sandra that if she was dealing with family medical bills, educational expenses for her children, or any other financial emergency, we could work something out. Maybe an advance on her salary, or a company loan that could be deducted from her paychecks over time. I believed in supporting my employees through difficult periods because people can't do their best work when they're drowning in personal problems. But Sandra deflected every attempt I made to help her. She insisted everything was fine, changed the subject whenever I brought up her obvious distress, and avoided extended conversations with me entirely. That's when my instinct started screaming that something was seriously wrong. When someone you've worked closely with for years suddenly becomes evasive and distant right after you return from an extended absence, there are really only 2 possibilities that make sense. Either Sandra was having an affair with my husband, or Sandra was stealing money from the company. Those were the only explanations that fit her behavior pattern. I decided to test my theory by requesting detailed financial reports from the 2-year period when I had been less involved in day-to-day operations. Sandra's reaction confirmed my suspicions immediately. The first time I asked for the reports, Sandra said she would organize everything and send it to me the next day. The next day, she said she was too busy with other urgent tasks, but would definitely send everything the following day. This pattern continued for several days, with Sandra becoming increasingly anxious every time I mentioned the financial reports. Then something happened that changed everything. Instead of walking from her office to mine to have a conversation face-to-face like we had always done, Sandra sent me a text message. Even though our offices were separated only by glass partitions and we could see each other clearly, she chose to communicate by text. The message said she needed to speak with me outside the office, somewhere private, and specifically requested that my husband not know about our conversation. My blood turned to ice when I read that message. Sandra suggested we meet at a shopping center food court near our office. When we sat down together, Sandra looked terrified, but she also looked determined. What she told me that afternoon was both devastating and incredible. She explained that as soon as I had stepped back from daily operations during my pregnancies, my husband had approached her with a new set of financial procedures. These weren't legitimate business practices. My husband was systematically stealing money from our company, and he needed Sandra's cooperation to make it work. But here's what makes Sandra incredible, and why I have nothing but admiration for her actions during this entire situation. Sandra found herself in an impossible position. She had left a stable job to come work for us. She had given up her unemployment benefits and job security to join our team. She was supporting her elderly mother who had serious health problems, paying rent, and living paycheck to paycheck like most working people. When your boss tells you to transfer money to specific accounts, and you're a low-level employee who can't afford to lose your job, What choice do you really have? You can't just say no and expect to keep your job, but you also can't participate in illegal activities without protecting yourself. So Sandra did something brilliant. She consulted with a lawyer. The lawyer told her he couldn't work for free, but for $300, he would advise her on how to protect herself legally while following her employer's instructions. His advice was simple, but crucial. Every conversation, every instruction, every financial transaction needed to be documented through email or text messages. The lawyer explained that my husband would never explicitly write something like, "Let's steal this money," but Sandra could create a paper trail of evidence by confirming instructions in writing. She would send messages like, "I deposited $3,000 into account X today, as requested," and wait for written confirmation. Over those 2 years, Sandra meticulously documented every single transaction. She had proof of money being transferred to my husband's personal accounts and to accounts belonging to another woman whose identity she didn't know at the time. The total amount my husband stole from our company was approximately $360,000. Let me repeat that. $360,000 stolen from the business we had built together over more than a decade. Sandra showed me all the evidence. Bank transfer confirmations, text message conversations, email threads, everything. She made it clear that she hadn't taken a single dollar for herself, and that every fraudulent transaction had been initiated by my husband's direct instructions. Sandra expected me to fire her immediately. She had consulted with her lawyer and knew she was legally protected, but she assumed our working relationship was over. Instead, I looked at Sandra and said something that surprised both of us. I thanked her for her honesty and asked her to stay. Sandra started crying, overwhelmed by the stress she had been carrying for 2 years, and relieved that the truth was finally out in the open. Then I said something that made Sandra nervous all over again. I told her we were going to execute our own 360-degree turn. He had stolen $360,000, and now we were going to completely reverse the situation. What happened next was the most elaborate and satisfying revenge scheme you could imagine. I started telling my husband that the business was struggling financially. I showed him reports indicating we were losing money, falling behind on contracts, and heading toward bankruptcy. I played the role of a worried business owner who was confused about why our previously profitable company was suddenly failing. Meanwhile, Sandra and I were systematically redirecting company funds away from accounts my husband could access. We were essentially doing to him exactly what he had been doing to the company, but in reverse. I made a big show of cutting our personal expenses to try to save the business. I told my husband we needed to sell one of our cars, postpone vacation plans, and reduce our household spending so we could keep all our employees and avoid bankruptcy. My husband started panicking because he had been using stolen company money to support his girlfriend. By this point, I had discovered that the mysterious woman receiving money transfers was a 23-year-old woman he had been seeing for over a year. This young woman had expensive tastes and expectations. She wanted to travel internationally, stay in luxury hotels, and experience the kind of lifestyle that required serious money. Since my husband couldn't travel with her without me finding out, he would send her on elaborate vacations to places like Disney World in Europe, often paying for her to bring friends or family members along. As our supposed financial situation became more desperate, my husband could no longer maintain his girlfriend's expensive lifestyle. The relationship started falling apart, and that's when he made the decision that sealed his fate. He asked for a divorce. My husband suggested that instead of trying to save our failing business, we should dissolve our marriage and divide our assets. He proposed that I keep the business, he would keep our beach house, and we would sell our apartment and split the proceeds. I agreed to his proposal immediately. By this point, Sandra and I had recovered significantly more than the $360,000 he had originally stolen. He had no idea that the business was actually thriving and more profitable than ever. The divorce proceeded exactly as he had suggested. He got the beach house, I kept the business, and we split the money from selling our apartment. He was convinced he had made a smart deal because he believed the business would fail within 2 years, leaving me with nothing but debt. After the divorce was finalized, my husband tried to start his own business venture with a food truck, but it failed quickly. He sold the beach house and used that money to buy a smaller apartment. Today, he works as a rideshare driver and does occasional consulting work when he can find it. Meanwhile, the business continued growing and prospering. We maintained all our major contracts, hired additional employees, and expanded into new markets. The most ironic part of this entire story is that my ex-husband still doesn't realize what happened. He believes he got divorced from a woman whose business failed, and he has no idea that I discovered his theft and turned the tables on him completely. He pays minimal child support and sees our children every other weekend for about 21 hours total. He picks them up Saturday evening, spends one night with them, and returns them Sunday afternoon, sometimes without even providing lunch. This is the man who thought he could steal from me, cheat on me, and leave me with a failing business while he started a new life with a much younger woman using money he had stolen from our family. Instead, he ended up divorced, essentially unemployed, and completely cut off from the profitable business we had built together. His girlfriend left him as soon as his money ran out, and he lost everything he thought he had gained through his deception. Sandra still works for me, and she's now one of my most trusted employees. She proved her integrity under the most difficult circumstances, and I'll never forget her loyalty during the darkest period of my marriage. The moral ambiguity of this situation isn't lost on me. Technically, Sandra and I engaged in the same kind of financial manipulation that my husband had initiated. But in my mind, this was justice, not theft. He had stolen from our joint business, betrayed our marriage, and attempted to leave me with nothing while he started over with a younger woman using money that belonged to both of us. Some people might argue that two wrongs don't make a right, but sometimes karma needs a little help. This is a true story shared by one of my followers on social media, and I wanted to share it with all of you because it demonstrates how betrayal can come from the people closest to us, but also how strength and intelligence can triumph over deception. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the end. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and share it with someone who needs to hear about resilience and justice. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments about this incredible story of betrayal and revenge. What would you have done in this situation? Do you think the revenge was justified, or should she have taken a different approach? Let me know in the comments below.